Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to welcome you all to Waltham, Massachusetts for the Cancer Research and Vaccine Summit 2025. Trying to clap, sorry. Before we begin, we'd like to ask all attendees to please come to the front and do not fill up the round tables in the back. I don't bite that much, so please come close. I am delighted to extend a warm welcome to our esteemed sponsors, exhibitors, distinguished speakers, delegates, students, and attendees from all across the globe. Special thank you to the delegates joining virtually and those who couldn't make it due to visa or personal issues. Your presence is greatly missed, and we appreciate your continued support. My name is Parker Jameson from Vanderbilt University here in the United States, and it is a great privilege to welcome you all on behalf of the organizing committee to the Cancer Research and Vaccine Summit Global Edition hosted by SCON Conferences. The Cancer Research and Vaccine Summit Global Edition is a premier gathering dedicated to fostering innovation, collaboration, and breakthroughs in cancer research and vaccine development. This summit brings together leading scientists, clinicians, industry experts, and policymakers to share cutting-edge advancements, discuss emerging challenges, and explore novel solutions in oncology and immunization. With a strong focus on translating research into practice, this event serves as a platform to exchange knowledge, forge meaningful partnerships, and accelerate progress in the fight against cancer and infectious diseases. Through insightful presentations, engaging panel discussions, and interactive networking sessions, this summit aims to drive transformative change and improve patient outcomes worldwide. We extend our sincerest gratitude to McKesson for their generous sponsorship and unwavering commitment to advancing cancer care. It is an unprecedented time for patients living with cancer as life sciences companies race to create new cutting-edge therapies. With cancer care becoming more targeted, providers, life science companies, and payers face a multitude of challenges and complexity in the development of new treatments and making them accessible to patients in need. At McKesson, their unmatched portfolio of oncology businesses and partners provide research, insights, technologies, and services that are helping to address these hurdles and improve cancer specialty care. McKesson is fueling discovery by helping patients participate in cutting-edge research clinical trials closer to home through its joint venture with Sarah Cannon Research Institute. The U.S. Oncology Network and McKesson Provider Solutions are advancing specialty care and high-quality cancer care in the communities where patients live by supporting the practices of thousands of independent community-based providers. Ontada, a McKesson business dedicated to oncology, generates real-world data and real-world evidence and provides clinical education and provider technology to inform and improve cancer care. As one of the largest distributors of oncology and special medicines, they are ensuring medicines make their way to those who are counting on them. And through Cover My Meds, Biologics by McKesson, and GPO services, their work continues to help patients access, afford, and adhere to their medicines. We extend our sincere appreciation to Egan Labs LLC here in the United States for joining us as an exhibitor. ACAM AI is an innovative SaaS company revolutionizing research labs in healthcare manufacturing by enhancing safety, quality, and efficiency through artificial intelligence and automation. Their AI-driven solutions empower R&D teams, healthcare manufacturers, and quality professionals with data-driven insights to optimize decision-making and operational performance. Let's give another round of applause to McKesson and ACAM Labs. Moving along, we are honored to invite Deanna Smith, CEO of SCRI, who is to the dais, who will be the moderator for the panel discussion. Deanna Smith is the Chief Executive Officer of Sarah Cannon Research Institute, SCRI, where she leads the organization's overall mission and vision to make global impact on the next generation of cancer care. SCRI, supported by McKesson, brings together physicians who are actively accruing patients to clinical trials at more than 250 locations in 24 states across the U.S. During her tenure, SCRI has experienced exponential growth and continues to conduct pivotal clinical research trials that has led to the majority of newly approved cancer therapies now available to patients. She began her career as an auditor and certified public accountant with KPMG after receiving a bachelor's degree in accounting from Pepperdine University. She is a member of the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the American Society of Clinical Oncology. She is also the chair of Pepperdine University Board of Regents. We invite our next panelist, Mia Velasquez, VP of Research Operations. Sorry. You're all up here. Might as well introduce you all. For the U.S. Oncology Network and McKesson to the dais. Already here. Mia Velasquez-Egan is currently the Vice President of Research Operations for the U.S. Oncology Network at McKesson, partnering with community oncology practices in the network to expand clinical research participation and patient access to advanced therapies. She works closely with physicians, operations, and clinical leaders in growing their programs in collaboration with SCRI. Before stepping into this role, she led the network's strategic initiatives team and supported McKesson's oncology strategy. Prior to her time at McKesson, Mia served life sciences and healthcare providers as a strategy and operations consultant. She holds an MBA from Kellogg School of Management and Northwestern University and an undergraduate degree from Rice University. And our last panelist, David Spigel, MD, Chief Scientific Officer at SCRI, and oncologist with SCRI Oncology Partners, a practice in the U.S. Oncology Network. Dr. Spigel joined SCRI in 2003 as Chief Scientific Officer and oversees all scientific aspects of SCRI's clinical trial program, working with the research physicians, leaders to ensure the best new agents and studies available to their patients. He serves as primary contact for the pharma and biotech partners, as well as the strategic site physicians with whom SCRI conducts cancer research. Dr. Spigel received his bachelor's degree from Tulane University in New Orleans in 1992 and his medical degree from the University of Tennessee in Memphis in 1996. After completing an international medicine and chief residency at Indiana University Medical Center, he completed his fellowship in hematology and oncology at the Dana-Farber Cancer Research Institute in Boston. He is a board-certified medical oncology. Additionally, he is a medical oncologist with SCRI Oncology Partners, a practice in the U.S. Oncology Network. Now I have the pleasure of handing over the microphone to Deanna Smith to lead the panel discussion.
Thanks so much, Parker. Thank you. I appreciate your representing Nashville, Tennessee, with Dr. Spigel and me, and Mia will talk about you later in a minute. Thanks for those who are joining online, and on behalf of the McKesson family of cancer assets, we are privileged to be here and excited to talk about what we're doing in clinical trials. McKesson is incredibly committed to the oncology ecosystem and committed to fueling discovery through all of its unique opportunities and assets in cancer. So if we can go to the next slide, I would love to give you guys context for who we are at Sarah Cannon Research Institute. I have the incredible privilege of leading SCRI, and we believe that we are uniquely positioned to do something special in cancer research. And that is also in partnership, and you'll hear us talk a bit about our partnerships with U.S. Oncology Network and Ontada and other assets inside the McKesson ecosystem. But David, maybe before we get to the slides to set context, I would love to hear from you. This area is not unfamiliar to you, as Parker indicated, with your fellowship at Dana-Farber. But I'd love to hear you talk about your role as Chief Scientific Officer. What does that really mean in the context of community cancer care?
Yeah, thanks, and good morning to everybody. I was looking over the agenda for this very exciting meeting. There's a lot of innovation that's going to be discussed here, particularly with immunotherapy, for example. And we all know all of that is great when it's discovered in a lab, but then has to be tested so it can be proven to see if it's going to have an effect in care. And then ultimately we hope to get approved so we can get it to patients. And that process happens through clinical research. I mean, basic research obviously gets it to meetings like this and gets it to the beginning stages of drug development. But ultimately, you have to get those therapies tested in humans. And that's what excited me when I was in fellowship, as you mentioned, to learn about clinical research. But at that time, which was a long time ago, I'm a little old, clinical research was really in the province of just academic centers. And there still is a lot of fantastic work at places like Vanderbilt and Dana-Farber and a lot of institutions that you all represent. But at least in the U.S., most cancer care is in the community. And so if you need patients to go on clinical trials and patients want access to new therapies, Sarah Cannon was appealing to me when I was looking for an opportunity to do clinical research because it had this great connection with patients and doctors in the homes and communities where they live. And that's really the program that Deanna has built and led, all 1,300, I think, colleagues at Sarah Cannon. And so what we'll be talking about is, this vast network that brings innovative therapies that you're discussing today right into the backyards of patients where they live. And so that's exciting to test therapies, see them have effects, and then hopefully get them approved. I'll finish with one little vignette. I was in clinic Tuesday, and the first patient I saw is, without giving anything away in terms of the sponsors of that study, is on a targeted therapy for refractory lung cancer, actually targeting, I'll just say, the RAS pathway, a pathway that, for decades we've not been able to solve. I walked in the room and the patient's only been on therapy for 15 days, and he told me that all the lesions he can feel, he had palpable nodules, are all gone, that he feels the best he's felt in years. And so look, you walk out of that room and you're like, I don't know if this drug's going to make it. This is one anecdotal experience. This has got to be tested. It's got to get to phase 2 and phase 3. This is a first in human study, but that's how it could start. It could start that way, where here's somebody with a great therapy that's targeting a pathway that, in the lab, we think should be a targetable pathway. Here it is in the clinic. And so I shared that nice story with my colleagues at Sarah Cannon, because they have patients with RAS altered pathways, and they need to know that these therapies are showing early promise. And that's fun to try to, and that's exciting because it brings a lot of hope, not just to me as an investigator, but patients, I think, in generations to come.
So, Dr. Spigel, I want to talk more about physician engagement. So I'm going to pick up there. But Mia, incredible partnership with you and the U.S. Oncology Network. Your role has been so vital as we think about really tapping into a much bigger pool of patients. So I'd love for you to talk about your role and how you see this partnership with U.S. Oncology Network and Sarah Cannon Research Institute functioning on scale.
Absolutely. And good morning, everybody in person and online. So it has been an incredible experience getting to understand the complexities of cancer care within the community practices that we partner with at the U.S. Oncology Network, and really be guided through the clinical research journey by our Sarah Cannon colleagues. So the U.S. Oncology Network, we support over 2,700 independent physician providers across the U.S. They're based in 31 states, and it's an incredible idea to think about the fact that we have patients in Paris, Texas, Roanoke, Virginia, Appalachian, Virginia, who are able to access cancer care within 15, 20 minutes of their home. And that's really what our practices are providing. And we within the network are supporting them with a lot of their operations, a significant portion of just how they process the business of healthcare. These are physician owners. They are focused on delivering the best care. And so we within the network are trying to make that as easy as possible for them. Most of our physicians are generalists. They are not specialists in one disease state or another. And so then one of their days, they may be seeing 6 or 7 different types of cancers. When you then think about research experiences within that, oftentimes they might have a menu of 15 or 20 trials available at their practices for them to know all of the complexities, all of the factors of how to consider and talk about that trial with their patient and also then deliver that care. It can get pretty complex. We also have staff who may have some research experience, but, Tyler, Texas is not a hotbed for top tier research operations and clinicians from a staff perspective. So in working with SCRI, we are really able to help bring to them more opportunity from a trial perspective, access to better trials, but also help them think through, how do I embed research and the complexity of it within my very busy practices, everyday workflow, also considering how challenging it can be to simply have that conversation with a patient who maybe has never thought of a clinical trial as an opportunity for them. So our role and the way we partner is really focused on making that as easy as possible with all of the complexity that already exists in research. I know we're going to talk about technology, but that's another component with working with Ontada that we are trying to navigate as we, have an oncology-focused EMR that maybe is not actually focused on being a research-driven EMR. And that needs to be bridged, and we're really excited about that partnership as well.
Thanks, Mia. Just a couple of slides. I think everybody in this audience is clear that 85% of cancer patients are seen in the community, and really 4 to 6%, I think it's probably generous, Dr. Spigel, of patients go on clinical trial. And Mia, you said it perfectly. We're really passionate about these patients getting access closer to home. So, Dr. Spigel, when I look at this map, pretty significant scale. We believe that really moving the needle from a drug development perspective, that scale really plays here. That feels big and that feels hard. And so when you think about your role and the way that you engage physicians, the way that you see building the appropriate menus in the communities and all these places, Mia, that you referred to, when you look at that, that feels daunting. Maybe talk a bit about our playbook. How are we thinking about doing this with this level of scale? So we have thousands of patients on clinical trial, and hats off to you and to our faculty for making that happen. But talk about the enormity of the task, of the challenge, and maybe how you see breaking that, eating that elephant one bite at a time.
Yeah, it's funny because, if you lived in Waltham and you unfortunately had to deal with cancer, you are 15, 30 minutes away from some of the best opportunities in the world to get access to clinical research. But when you look at this map, and I'm speaking of Boston, obviously, when you look at this map here, not everyone has that access. I mean, there's some great institutions, academic centers, premier cancer centers that are represented on that map, but most of those dots on there are in communities where that's kind of where cancer care is going to be for patients. And as Deanna says, it's in the hundreds of thousands of people who are impacted by this who can't get access to premier centers. And so it is kind of one bite at a time. I mean, if you look at any place on there, I love you mentioned Tyler, Texas, which I'm discovering is like this mecca of great healthcare, actually. So that's I don't know the population, but it's a place like if you had cancer, how do you help the doctors there get the most innovative therapies there? And so what we kind of believe is, look, we all know what the common cancers are: lung cancer, breast cancer, colorectal cancers, pancreatic cancer. And so we try to help, for example, doctors in Tyler, Texas, have a great offering a menu, so to speak, of opportunities for patients with those cancers we know are going to be in that community. We also talk with the doctors, like, what are you seeing a lot of that maybe a doctor in Baton Rouge doesn't see as much of? And so we'll hear things like, well, we see a lot of refractory lymphoma, or we see a lot of refractory prostate cancer. And so we try to work to look at all the opportunities we have, which are in the hundreds of clinical trials, and say, you know what, here's a great opportunity for you to consider in Tyler, Texas, as you build out your menu. We definitely don't try to be prescriptive and say you must have X, Y, and Z studies there. Only you know what's best in terms of what your doctors will be excited about, what your patients will be excited about. But we're trying to bring you the best in science. And we think these are exciting opportunities that we're learning about state-of-the-art therapies and immunotherapy or targeted drugs, and we want to bring them to you. But I'll finish, Deanna. There's some places that it's funny because this conference focuses a lot on vaccine development. So those are very complicated drugs or therapies, I should say, and the studies are complicated. They require special kind of IRB oversight, drug handling, sometimes even hospitalization to monitor immune side effects. And as you know well, we were talking about this at dinner last night, not every place is equipped to do that. In Tyler, Texas, it may be that only one of their, I'm guessing, 15 satellite clinics even is near a hospital where they could watch patients. So we try to work with sites to help them kind of do the studies that work for the patients in the communities where they live, and then invest and build out the necessary infrastructure that they need if they want to do more complicated studies to monitor cytokine release syndrome or observe patients on CAR T therapies. We're committed to investing in those resources to help them do that if they think they can do that in a safe way for patients.
So, Mia, adding on to Dr. Spigel, technology in so many ways is the glue, and through Ontada and Genospace and those opportunities inside our ecosystem. And again, what's so great is that there are so many partners inside this McKesson oncology ecosystem. Talk a bit about how technology not only provides patient access, but really ties together what it is that we're trying to do on scale.
Absolutely. This is something that I could speak to for hours because it's incredibly interesting and passionate about it. Within the U.S. Oncology Network and in our partnership across the broader McKesson oncology ecosystem, we have a oncology-focused EMR. It's called iKnowMed. And so in iKnowMed, it's a just rich trove of all of the clinical data that exist across our over 1.4 million patients that we see a year. The challenge, as we're talking through, is that our clinicians, our staff, they are working through a day of 20, 30 patients a day, all specialties, all different disease states. It could be a lung cancer and then a breast cancer patient next. And they're just trying to keep up with where is this patient in treatment? How do I make sure that we're talking about the right things? And then quickly move on to their next patient because it's a high volume that we're seeing. The other challenge, of course, is the trials and the therapies are getting more complex. And so within iKnowMed, we are able to receive all of the testing and biomarker testing data that comes into place. But as this group well knows, a 300-page PDF with lab results is not a very effective way to be able to identify and narrow down what really do I need to know about this patient for their care. So Genospace is able to then help us cull through those test results and actually ingest that data into iKnowMed and also use that data in partnership with our trial menu curation to identify patients for trials. So it's an incredible pathway of how do we have all of the clinical data about the patient that lives in our EMR, marry it really well with complex testing data and align it with the menu that is available. The secret superpower here as well is that's a great resource. It provides great information, but how do you action on it? And so in working with SCRI, we do have access to a team of data scientists that are able to help us with effective trial matching. And so as opposed to a physician having to pull up an EMR, pull up a separate page for maybe their day-to-day schedule, their Genospace outcomes, they instead get a notification, a tag from the SCRI team that identifies you're seeing a patient today who has scans possible progression would be a great fit for this trial with these factors. Consider having a conversation. And so receiving that effective notification, pulling from the technology that we have, is an incredible intervention because it puts it top of mind for them. I always like to reference it. We have an incredible haystack of patients that could be offered trial, but finding that needle, that one patient that would be a great match, is really tough for a physician and their staff who are navigating the daily cancer care journey. Having that needle be identified through our technology offerings and our Sarah Cannon colleague partnerships has been an incredible gift. It's really transformed our growth.
Great. Thanks, Mia. Well said. Okay, so Dr. Spigel, we've got all these patients inside US Oncology Network, where the dots are. Incredible access to technology, both from a patient, everybody's on the same, or for the most part, everybody's on the same EHR. And we have Genospace, who is helping to match patients to clinical trials that are developed and partnered with Sarah Cannon Research Institute. And Dr. Spigel, we know that how complex clinical research is, and you've got to have the infrastructure and all the things that Mia talked about. But in the end of the day, it is the physician who's on the 1572 making the decisions about the patient, what's best for the patients. There's a lot of physicians. So you're really working to build their menu, to engage them. How are you doing that, both from a leadership perspective as well as helping to inspire them on the ground?
Yeah, it's
loaded question, isn't it?
Well, when you put it like that, it is a lot. That the core thing is that's exciting but daunting, as Deanna is kind of alluding to, is the pace of scientific discovery. Information is the greatest that I think we've ever seen, at least in oncology. And so as new information comes out literally almost weekly about breakthroughs in different cancer settings, Mia's hitting on a big thing. Is you're talking about a doctor in the community who super smart folks who have to know a lot about everything. So how do they keep up? How do they know what the latest standards are, much less clinical trials that are available discussing new therapies? And so it involves technology. There's a lot of education. We depend on, obviously, conferences like this and external partners who provide kind of courses and updates. But we try internally to do that. We have a pretty complicated structure of faculty on committees that are in charge of keeping up with the latest science in certain diseases. For example, an interest of mine is lung cancer. And so we have a lung cancer executive group whose charge is every day to keep up with the latest science and then decide what are the great studies that we're being offered that you want to do, and then bridging the gap of engaging physicians, helping them understand through technology, as Mia points out. Here's an exciting development, we'll just say in RAS-directed therapy, since I brought that up earlier, helping them understand what that means, why this drug is exciting, how the study is done, what it takes to get onto the study, serving up even, here's some patients we've identified in your clinic that are eligible for this trial, providing all the tools necessary to help a busy doctor overwhelmed by science and the busyness of a day. You mentioned 20 or 30 patients. Some of these doctors are seeing 75 patients in a day. And so how do you do all that and provide the best in care? And it's really on us to take the work out of it for the physician and make sure that he or she understands, we're here to help you. We're here to help you be successful and provide everything in front of you, and even serve up some of these difficult things of matching patients, of understanding eligibility, of understanding trial schemas, and then helping folks enroll. I mean, Deanna, I think spoils, I'm a doctor, spoils us doctors by doing like most of the work for us. And so our job is to hopefully focus on making the best decisions for patients and explaining to patients why we think a trial makes sense for them or not. Hopefully the answer always is yes, that it makes sense for their situation, and making sure clinical research is not a scary thing, is an understandable thing and something they're excited about. That 4% number is just too low, right? We've got to increase that number to get more therapies developed and out the door.
So, Mia, the physician is critical, and thank you, Dr. Spigel, for a vote of confidence on the infrastructure that we're providing. We really want to remove those barriers so that more patients go on clinical trial. Mia, as you think about, again, the enormity of the map is just, incredible. And you are charged every day with making sure at these practices that they understand what they need to make it happen and that the appropriate investments are happening. Talk about what the infrastructure looks like on the ground as we think about interacting with the physicians and the practices to say, this is what you really need. Because we know these physicians come from prestigious programs across the country and want to. So the spirit is willing, but the flesh needs to come behind to make sure that we can do it. So talk a little bit about the readiness on the ground, how we're assessing that, what we need to make that happen, because quality is job one as it relates to getting the right patients on the right trial at the right time.
Absolutely. And I'll talk through this with some examples. This is real life conversations that we've had over the last few months and year around our practices and how they're structured. So when I talk about a practice, I may be talking about 9 physicians that all work out of the same office, or I could be talking about 500 physicians that operate out of 400 different offices across a state. So when you think about a research program or a trial being available at one of these practices, that could be we have a trial at one office, and it's pretty easy for them to have a resource, some centralized staff and support there that is going to be able to then execute on the delivery of that trial once we've got a patient enrolled and identified. On the flip side, well, I'll stay on that example actually, because one of the challenges that office may have, and this is a real life practice that we have in the Midwest, they are navigating hospital pressures. They're navigating some competitive dynamics. They're a small group of really passionate oncologists and hematologists, but they're currently thinking about their financial viability as a group. And then we are coming to them and also asking, we'd love for you to invest in research staff, in a -80 freezer that you don't have space for because you really work in a very small clinic environment. And that's a tough conversation to help navigate. So one of the things that we often talk to them about is, okay, let's think through how does this investment portray not just from a financial setting, but how can we talk about this within your market? If you're navigating a hospital and this is how they talk about their research program, where can we have really targeted conversations with referring providers about what you bring to the table and the fact you also have trials available? So we're focused on increasing their volume. Then we're also talking to them a little bit about how having a trial or having a research program can help them attract new physicians. This is not a place where a lot of folks want to move to practice oncology. But if you have a really exciting young fellow who wants to do research, but also wants to have that community oncology practice feel, having research is a really attractive opportunity for that fellow. So for those smaller practices, we're helping navigate sort of the financial aspects of it, helping them realize the investment in staff will pay off, not just from a financial setting, but from all of these other opportunities. On the flip side, I talked about this practice with, 300 sites of care, several hundred physicians. And so their challenges are very different. They want to make sure, financially they're set, they're good, but they're navigating quality oversight when they have a principal investigator who is then responsible for 20 different sites where that trial is being delivered with physicians that they don't have direct oversight or control over. These are all physician owners of their practices. And so how they navigate conversations is really interesting. We talk a lot about the role of the PI and how giving them visibility, giving them greater access into through technology will help them ensure quality. Flip side of that, Those offices, those sites may be well staffed from a research perspective, but that's a really busy clinic. And so we hear this all the time. They're working in closets. How do we help the practice then view the research team as a part of their organization versus having an infusion nurse who has never worked with investigational therapy feel comfortable in learning enough about the side effects so she can support her research team in then delivering that care. And so we're navigating a lot of these conversations. It's not just the investment. It's not just how you embed research and make it a core part of the everyday operations in these practices, but also how you can have the full team, operations, administrative, physician, really recognizing the importance of, ultimately the therapy that we're testing out will be a therapy that everybody will hopefully be delivering as their official standard of care. The flip side conversation that we always talk about is every therapy that we're delivering standard of care, all of the oncology drugs that McKesson is moving through distribution with Provider Solutions and making available across the US, that at some point was tested through clinical trials. And making those connections can really help us flip the dialogue for our physicians as well when they're kind of overwhelmed, when our staff overwhelmed with the idea of how am I going to do this really, really hard thing when really it's also the best outcome for the possible patients now and in the future.
Great, Mia. I couldn't agree more. Dr. Spigel, when you think about the map that we showed, we'll talk about our different lines of business in a moment, but when you look at that map, all capabilities are not the same across the map. We have varying, when you look at our menu of trials, hundreds of trials, they vary in degrees of complexity. If you think about the ability to give CAR T, how do you think about placing those trials in collaboration with industry across this incredible platform? And then, so I'd love for you to break down maybe how we think about that, and then talk about, I have to put a shameless plug in for what we did in sickle cell, and how did we walk across that bridge from what we do every day to that particular technology. So twofold question.
Yeah. Well, look, I think one of the amazing things about our program is that we are poised to do anything. So, every day, we call them leads. Every day a new opportunity comes to Sarah Cannon about, I got an email this morning about a new study that's very exciting coming to us. And I think the reason those opportunities come to us is because of our ability to deliver, to open studies, to get them enrolled, and to do it safely with high quality. And so every opportunity, whether it's a CAR T that's very specialized, can only be done at a handful of places in the world, first in human studies, or kind of bread and butter, very, I'd say vanilla phase 3 randomized trial that could be done in thousands of locations. We want to be able to do those studies, and we are equipped to do any study in solid or hematologic or in pediatric settings. So I'll just jump to that real quickly. So, and I give all the credit to Dr. Haydar Frangoul, who leads our pediatric program. Dr. Frangoul had an opportunity to study CRISPR technology in patients with sickle cell disease. So not something that we have this long experience in terms of research. And just to jump to it, really has changed the care of patients around the world with sickle cell disease. Yes, not an easy therapy to deliver, a very expensive therapy, very complicated. But doing that study, showing it could be done, demonstrating the benefits in a handful of people relative to, say, a trial in breast cancer, leads to a change in care that is dramatic and will affect people everywhere. Can we do things ranging from CRISPR to the next aromatase inhibitor in breast cancer? Yeah, we're poised to do all of that, but not every site is, right? So even though our program SCRI can do anything, not every site can do everything. And so we're trying to, I just had this conversation yesterday on the plane. We're trying to understand and scale, complexities of studies so that Doctors in Fort Myers, Florida can do certain kinds of studies, and doctors in Eugene, Oregon can do other kinds of studies. It's not reasonable to expect that everybody could do a very complicated CRISPR study, for example. Some places can do it. And some places just want to do things that are easier. They don't want to have things that are very complex that require a lot of assessments and EKGs and biopsies and centralized confirmation. And so we try to be a little bit of everything to everybody, but it does take a lot of work. We have teams that evaluate opportunities, feasibility, and then deployment. So, we can do things on paper, but then you got to put it into practice. And so we've got fantastic infrastructure to help deliver these opportunities to patients where they're getting their care. So it continues to evolve. I mean, I think if you look 10 years ago, certainly 20 years ago, studies were very different than they are now. Studies are probably too complex, to be honest. I'll give you one example, and then I'll turn over to Deanna for the next question. But something like PD-L1 testing, right, which is important in a variety of cancers, but it is done routinely. It's kind of like HER2 testing. And so why do we have to have a new study for a PD-L1 directed therapy or a HER2 directed therapy that requires central confirmation of HER2 status and PD-L1 status when we do that routinely every day around the country, around the world? And so those kind of things are tripping us up because that makes it harder to get studies enrolled when those are all basic things that doctors know how to do pretty well. So anyway, things like that we're trying to pull out of trials and then deal with the things that still are going to have to be in there, new markers, new targets that have to be centralized, confirmed.
So David, basically, you're looking at this platform.
Yeah.
You're working with the physicians to help them assess. And Mia, you're a huge part of this. What level of infrastructure are they interested in? And so, David, these more complex studies are really done at more discrete, a fewer number of sites that have invested in this infrastructure, and CRISPR, as an example, is in Nashville with Dr. Frangul. So we're assessing across this big platform to be sure that these physicians get what they need. They're able to pursue their interests for the types of trials that they do. Mia, on the ground there, as these physicians are assessing the types of trials where they want to participate, we know there's David, I think we're calling it a core menu. There's a core menu of studies that we've got to have at these sites. What are those conversations like, Mia, as you think about helping them build their menu, not only the investments, but how they can be aspirational in their goals for recruitment? Because we know, right, with our pharma partners, they're asking us to conduct a certain amount of research and deliver on the accrual for how do you see those conversations happening on the ground as we help them to reach even higher, to put more patients on clinical trial? Because it's hard, and it is, they do have to pause in their day to make that happen. What does that look like?
It's always an interesting dialogue, and we really don't know where it's going to land with each of our practices. So I think one of the first things that we always approach those conversations with is the realignment and resetting on like the mission of the patient. I think we've actually seen a lot of success in coming back to, our North Star is providing the best access of care to our patients. Part of that is making sure that if a trial could be their best option, we have that available and we can figure out a way to get that at your site. So that's the first point, has always been really helpful to just make sure that we have that alignment, and it's part of our core mission together. The second part of that is, how do they then take that aspiration and talk about it within their practice? One of the things that is really fascinating about working with community oncologists is there is a subset of them that don't have an interest in research. And so if you have a board of independent practice owners, group of them are passionate, they would love to be able to offer CAR T therapies, but that's going to require them to start working with a hospital partner. That's going to require them to invest financially in building out staff and building out infrastructure, taking space from an infusion room. They will then need to have that conversation with their colleagues who maybe don't see an interest in it. And that is a really tough conversation to help navigate and help them work through, because it's in part, the mission alignment isn't fully there. So in those conversations, we try to find what is the aspect of this investment opportunity that would then support your partners. And so what we often come to them with is, we don't need every physician in a practice to be a researcher. What we really want is a practice that supports research within and is willing to refer, is willing to contribute from their patient population to make. One of the interesting things is, for a research team that has often had challenges in keeping headcount, I think an industry-wide challenge that we have in research is high turnover of staff. So it's for a research team, and we have the constant turnover that exists in research staff. So if you have a really strong research nurse or a CRC, the likelihood that they're going to get picked up by a CRO or by a sponsor who's looking for some monitors is high. So for us, it's also helping them think through, how do you look at your research staff differently from a compensation, from a support perspective, because they are specialized resources that you want to invest in. How do we help them have a career ladder? One of the things that we're often talking about is, okay, don't hire a new nurse. That doesn't make sense financially for your practice. Do you have an infusion nurse who is maybe looking for his next opportunity? They're looking for where else they could go in their career, and having them spin into research where they will be stressed academically. They'll get challenged in a different way, could be a good opportunity. So oftentimes we're kind of positioning it's, yes, we're going to challenge you, and we hope that you can enroll a few more patients every year and aspire to grow and invest. But let's be creative about how we do that within the confines of your everyday operations.
And Dr. Spigel, this is not that uncommon. So we're clearly focused on the community. We have academic partnerships with OU in phase 1 and with Thomas Jefferson, Sidney Kimmel. I mean, the stresses and pressure at the academic institutions are similar. They have infrastructure challenges, maybe more now than ever, and they'll have infrastructure challenges. And not every physician in an academic medical center is a high-speed researcher in terms of putting patients on trial. So I want to make sure that we bridge that a little bit. This is not completely unique to the community.
No, it's not. It's not unique, and not to get political. I mean, it's getting even harder, right? We don't know how more challenges are going to be present in the academic settings to do research. And we were talking last night. Is that going to impact even the community physician? If so, when and how? And so we don't know how those things will work out. But you're right. There's challenges everywhere. It's not just in the community practice. With all the great points you made, it's really at all levels of cancer research.
Otherwise, the percentage would be higher, right? In
well,
total.
Interestingly enough, and we all know this, like in pediatric oncology, the percentage is much higher, right? It's almost everybody goes on clinical trials. And you have to ask yourselves, well, why is that? What's different about pediatric oncology and adult oncology? Well, they're at specialized centers. It's maybe the families are more motivated than and educated. I don't know, but it's an interesting flip, right? Pediatric oncology, almost everybody goes on clinical trials, and in adult oncology, it's the inverse. So
I want to highlight, guys, apologies. I wanted to do this a little bit earlier just to give you a sense of, for Sarah Cannon Research Institute, our capabilities. You can see the site side on the far left. Mia, you did a great job of addressing the pain points, what happens there. On the far right, we work with pharma closely on their assets and on their research and development needs. In the middle, for Sarah Cannon Research Institute, we have centralized site support, so what we call a site management organization on the ground with the practices that Mia referred to, giving them the infrastructure, removing the barriers. And personalized medicine, Dr. Spigel, I want to end with maybe you're talking about that just a little bit more before we go to questions. So that's Genospace, that's technology, that's incredible PhDs that help us find the right patients for the right trials. And then on the right is our oncology focused CRO. So these assets of a site management organization, how we help docs on the ground, a CRO that allows us to have the services and the capabilities and the connection with pharma that we need to have. And then personalized medicine in the middle really is the glue. You know, David, we've been talking about the docs in the community, the faculty that you have who are really international key opinion leaders as the basis. But I would love to focus on personalized medicine. So we hit on it a little bit. How does it functionally work? You've got the technology and you've got this group of individuals, but talk about how it really works on the ground in clinic.
Yeah, and right, the term, you know, perhaps gets overused, and you could even say it's a little tiring from a doctor's perspective because, you know, a doctor sometimes gets selfish and is like, well, I always provide personalized medicine and care. That's what I've always done. But the truth is you need help. And in oncology, I'll start with genetics. In oncology, you know, you can't take care of somebody certainly with advanced cancer without understanding the genomic profile of a tumor. I don't care what cancer it is. You know, it's just not good medicine these days. It's kind of like not doing a CT scan or a PET scan to work somebody up. And so genetics have gotten pretty complicated. To look at over 600 different genes, as Mia was pointing out, and look through 300 pages of a report from Foundation Medicine in Boston, a fantastic commercial vendor that does NGS testing in a very rapid way, blood and tissue. There's a lot of these around the country. Our doctors use all these vendor services. We don't mandate that you use Tempus or Foundation or Caris or whomever. We want you to use hopefully what you think is best for your patients, but we want to be able to help you understand what it means. And so we have an elaborate team that Mia was referencing of data scientists, genetic, really thought leaders who, believe it or not, get access in real time, 24/7 access to the results that doctors are ordering all over our network, often before the doctor gets it. And they're looking to see what was discovered and communicating in various ways through conferences, through one-on-one interactions. A lot of times it's just the doctor in the clinic saying, hey, can you help me with this, I'll keep picking on RAS, but maybe not a G12C mutation, but a G13R mutation. What does it mean? What are my opportunities? And so we have a team that then kind of curates that and says, here's what we think that means, and here's how it helps you understand the trials available to you at your center or nearby. And that's the start of kind of personalized medicine. Here's what we know about your patient. Here's what we think could help your patient. And even when it's not a clinical trial, we think these kind of therapies might make sense for you to consider. Again, not being prescriptive. Doctors, of course, have egos, and you don't want to tell them how to practice medicine. You want to enable them and help them in a personalized way. And so it's quite a service. I mean, it's when we first talked about launching something like this, 15 years ago, I didn't think you could do it and scale it, and you could, and that doctors would be receptive to it, but doctors cannot get enough of it. And I'm one of them. I interact with our personalized medicine team constantly for help. Help me understand what I should offer to this patient with our vast menu of opportunities and a mutation I've never heard of. And so it's quite the service. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. We're really, really proud of this group of colleagues that we get to work with every single day. I know we started 15 minutes early, so I want to be sure that I open up the floor for any questions at all for Dr. Spigel, for me, for Mia. I want to be sure that I allow time. Yes.
Do you have any system for involving the lay community as advisors, consultants, patient advisory group, something like that?
Great question, Dr. Spigel.
Yeah. So the question was, do we have anything in place for the lay community to serve as advisors or kind of part of our process? And so the quick answer, unless you correct me, is no. But it is something we talk a lot about. So a lot of us serve on other organizations. One of them is ASCO, the American Society of Clinical Oncology, and on various committees. And, every committee I've ever been on has a patient representative, a survivor or somebody who's an advocate. And I find it invaluable, not only on that committee structure, but then in care. So I'll think of a silly example, like taking care of somebody with Ross lung cancer, once a 1% alteration in lung cancer. Well, there's a Ross community online, on Twitter, or X, on Instagram. Those advocates help patients understand the journey, where to get access to clinical research. We work all the time with patient advocates. So I love your question. I've talked a little bit with Deanna about it. I know she thinks a lot about this. How can we incorporate patient advocates, community members into the important work we're doing? I don't know. I'm curious about your thoughts.
No, well, first of all, thank you for calling us to task, because Dr. Spigel said it perfectly. We know intellectually this is really smart to do. And again, the willingness is there, but the execution has not been there. And I would take it even down. So that was a fantastic example about a particular community of patients with a mutation. But even when thinking about tapping into the community differently, about how do you think about clinical trials? What does it look like to you? How do you feel? How do patients feel when we have that conversation with them? We know that they're at the most, in many situations, the most vulnerable and the most distressed place during that conversation. How can we do it better? So your coming to the conference today was opportune. And I think, thank you for reminding us about how important, because Dr. Spiegel's right. In these groups, in these meetings that we have, they're there, but they have not been incorporated as a part of the fabric of who we are yet. So thanks for coming today to I love it.
Well, we've
it.
talked about.
Thank you.
We sorry to monopolize the conversation here. We think, I know it sounds corny, but we think about clinical research every minute of every day. It's ridiculous. Like, what can we do differently? How can we do this better? And a topic that comes up over and over again recently is maybe we're looking at it like from only one perspective. Like, we should turn it and flip it and look at it from a patient's perspective and a family's perspective, because a patient and family sitting in front of me that wants to go on clinical research, guess what I'm doing? I'm going to put them on a trial. And so who's a better advocate for doing that than a patient and their family? But how are they going to know about this and advocate for themselves? And so we've got to figure out a solution there that will help in that.
Because we believe, I mean, Mia, this is probably about to roll off your tongue, but we believe that research should be the first option, not the last option. And Mia, we've had conversations, guys, you'll think this is so silly, but what if it works? That we provide to all of our clinicians a button to wear on their lapel that says, ask me about clinical trials. Now, we've got to be sure, Dr. Spigel, that they have the menu they need, to be able to answer that question. But Mia, your thoughts about the patient perspective and advocacy?
It's interesting and fascinating because we often are also talking about patient engagement and how patients make decisions. Oftentimes they're looking for where is the most innovative care offered, but they don't think about their community practice as the place where that would be. And so within the U.S. Oncology Network, we have marketing organizations, we have patient engagement arms. A few of our practices do have kind of patient advocacy groups that do partner, but it's broadly focused because in part, the vast majority of our population is not on a clinical trial. So we've started talking about how to tap into those settings and how to use our opportunity of engaging with the broader community, not just the patient, and making them aware of not just clinical trial access, but also helping to address the myths that we know all exist about what is a clinical trial. Am I a guinea pig? Is this going to be a therapy that is not the best for me? Working in a community oncology setting and having those rural, socioeconomic challenges of our patients, we're not, unfortunately, treating I'm going to take that back. We're not treating the patients that can afford to go to Boston and relocate their lives to access care here. We are treating a grandmother who needs to be able to be home every weekday in time to care for her grandchildren, but also then not have to drive more than 20 minutes to get her CT scan that has to happen every 6 weeks on a clinical trial. So how do we help them navigate through those conversations and educate them on what it all means, how it all plays out? That's a big question that we're excited to keep navigating, but I agree. It's the will is there for us, and I think we have the avenues for it. The execution is really hard.
Thank you for the question. Yes, sir.
And that is the challenge that there are clinical guidelines developed by professional societies. There's local guidelines developed because the chief of medicine in your division wants to practice a certain way. There's the standard of care as well. And the three of them very rarely align. And an example of that would be we work in breast cancer. And in triple negative breast cancer, a patient who's diagnosed at one center as triple negative may not be triple negative at another center. I'm just wondering how you have incorporated those kinds of challenges.
So that's a tough particular topic you bring up. So it is true. There's a lot of I don't want to call it noise. There's a lot of there are a lot of resources out there to help guide you. For example, the National Comprehensive Cancer Network guidelines are probably the most widely used in the world. ASCO has its own guidelines. As you mentioned, institutions have their own. You hope they align, but then let's throw in third-party payers. So Blue Cross has their own guidelines. United Health has their own guidelines. It's complicated. You gave a really difficult example of triple-negative breast cancer because, and I don't do breast cancer, but that term is kind of like, what does it even mean anymore? Because now we've defined an ultra-low positive group, which is barely perceptible HER2 expression. Is in the old days, we probably would have said that was negative HER2 status, but now, technically is that positive HER2? So is it triple negative or not? And so sometimes I think doctors, particularly in the community, are pretty savvy at flipping this to work best for them at whatever time they want to give certain therapies, but you hope they're doing it in the right way is your point. It's a challenge because the field moves so fast. So we didn't even have low HER2 expression as being meaningful 2 years ago. And last June, we defined ultra low HER2 expression in breast cancer. And so you can imagine with all the other areas, I mentioned PD-L1 earlier, MET is coming, MET expression. Are we going to define all these categories of ultra low, low, high, amplified? It's kind of, and that's where personalized medicine comes in. So you bring up a really complicated point of care because that is a tough one for me. But it's a critical one to get aligned on, so we provide the best care, and everybody's got to agree on what that is.
Well, impressive audience so far, right, Dr. Spigel?
Yeah, tough, really difficult.
Tough
questions.
group. I love it. I love it. Yes, sir.
I've been looking at artificial intelligence and machine learning in drug target discovery, but I recently read a paper about Google's AMI, Articulate Medical Intelligence Explorer, that is using a large language model, like ChatGPT type of functionality to provide diagnostic reasoning, differential diagnostic approaches, and clinical dialogue with patients. And I just didn't read carefully, but I just saw a new paper that provided statistics. They studied the success and the power of it as compared to standard clinical histories, and they had 4 or 5 permutations of personal clinicians with it or it alone, and it surprisingly did very well, including it rated higher than personal medical doctors on bedside manner and concern, which
No offense intended, David.
We've all experienced this with automated interactions. But anyway, I just wanted where you see this going, and we've had some false starts before with AI ML in medical applications.
I would say at a broad level, we're reading a lot about it and not implementing. We haven't really done that in a pilot form. I believe Mia or Dr. Spigel, inside our broader network. It's interesting. The data is compelling, but Dr. Spigel, perhaps from your perspective.
Yeah, maybe real quickly, because it's a great question, hot topic, so few answers, but I'll hit on maybe three areas. One is in the clinic. I think, and this sounds corny, but it's like going to revolutionize the way doctors work is the medical scribe. And so there's systems in place now where you can put your phone in a room, talk to your patient, walk out of the room, and the note's entirely done in 60 seconds, 120 seconds. And not only is your note done, your coding is done, and orders can be implemented. You need to get a CT scan next week and a brain MRI, and you get back to your computer and it's already been ordered. And so I think that's gonna save hours, probably 1 to 3 hours a day for doctors. It's going to be tremendous. So that's here now. Number two is in pathology, in radiology. I think, if I was advising someone to go into medical school, I would advise them not to go into pathology or radiology, because I think those fields, these systems are going to outperform them, and you'll need medicine, you'll need physicians and an MD. But you may not need as many people, because these are going to outperform pathologists and radiologists, in my opinion. And I probably have colleagues in the room in those fields who might differ. And the third is drug discovery. I think we were talking about this last night, I think. Sorry.
We talked about a lot last
few
night,
conversations. Companies have tens of thousands of compounds, and so a target gets discovered, is published in Nature tomorrow. You can run those compounds against those targets, and probably through AI do that in a very sophisticated way to develop better drugs. And so that's happening now. I don't think we've seen the proof of that, but that's coming. In fact, in radiology, we've been approached by a company that can interpret genetic mutations on a scan. So a patient can walk in, get a CT scan, and it can tell you that patient probably has an EGFR mutation. Incredible. So anyway, more to come on that, but we're at the beginning of it, I think.
Incredible.
Okay, I have one question. I like pancreatic cancer research very much. We treated lots of the pancreatic cancer in the past. I'd like to know American clinical trial for late stage pancreatic cancer. The chance, opportunity, and the challenge. Any trials, nobody guarantee. Maybe most time, maybe failure is for both. So any kind of can give the kind of guarantee, a backup. I feel pain. Lots of patients, try the new drugs, and most of the 90% is failure. This patient is die maybe quicker. Our trials damage the human patients. So any kind of backup, if your new drug, a new therapy is failure, what you can make up to save the patient? Don't lose life shortly. Thank you.
So okay. I only had one cup of coffee this morning, so I'm sorry if I'm talking too much. So when I started in 2003 out of training, we didn't have treatments for renal cell carcinoma, for melanoma. Most patients went into hospice. Now with melanoma, you have probably a 50-60% chance of being cured, stage 4. Pancreatic cancer is terrible. It's a nightmare. But I believe it's so exciting. We have a junior leader, Dr. Meredith Pelster at our center, who leads our GI program. And I look at Meredith and I say, Meredith, it's going to get so exciting in the next 10 years. I think we're going to make some major breakthroughs in pancreatic cancer. So 2 are happening right now as we speak. One got published 2 weeks ago in the Wall Street Journal, and one was a press release. So we'll hear more about these this summer and the next year. One, it sounds kind of odd. It's alternating electrical current therapy, a device called Optune. It's already on the market in glioblastoma, in mesothelioma, non-small cell lung cancer. And we know a study hit in pancreatic cancer. And so we're waiting for the data. But we know it's a positive study, already been a press release. That's going to be a big deal. Also in the Wall Street Journal, so I'm not giving anything up. We know that directing therapies, I mentioned my patient Tuesday with RAS G12C lung cancer. We know G12D directed therapies in pancreatic cancer are off the chart exciting right now. That's what was in the Wall Street Journal 2 weeks ago. These are rare, but these are major breakthroughs in pancreatic cancer, people having dramatic clinical, sometimes complete responses. So I highlight that because it reminds me of when we discovered RAF and MEK in melanoma, and then we discovered immunotherapy. And so it's, we talked about BCR-ABL last night and CML as the most obvious example. I think pancreatic cancer will get there. It won't just be chemotherapy, which has been helpful, but as you point out, hard and ultimately doesn't cure people. But it's exciting. I remain very hopeful for pancreatic cancer. It's just we've got a lot more work to do.
Thank you, Mia. Thank you, Dr. Spigel. Thank you, audience, and those online for this opportunity to be with you today. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
If I could get the panelists to stay up on the stage real quick. Sorry. So I'd like to invite Jamila Luahead, R&D site head at GSK Vaccines from Germany, to felicitate the panelists with mementos. So I'll go and hand those to you. That's the wrong one. So in recognition of Deanna Smith, valuable contributor as moderator of panel discussion, we'd like to have Jamila present her with a memento and gratitude for her dedication and support.
Congratulations. Thanks a lot for this very insightful discussions and many opportunities as you mentioned for new treatment in cancer. Yes, congratulations. Thank you very much. Thank you. Take care of us. Thank you.
So, and also in recognition of Mia Velasquez for her contribution as panelist, we'd also like Mila to present her with a memento for her dedication and support. And also in recognition of David Spigel for his contribution as panelist, we'd also like you to present this memento in gratitude for his dedication and support. For you.
Thank you all.